Something that I do on a day like today, which is November 5th in the United States, this is election day, is I like to think about the closet in the basement of the house that I grew up in. It was very interesting. It was an old house, um, and there was a gooseberry bush outside the back window. And the old couple that used to live in the house before us, they, even though they sold the house to us, they really missed the house. And so they would come back just to hang out there sometimes and would like bake us pies from that gooseberry bush. And you can see it out of the back window that was in this closet. And I used to go in this room and I would look up at the pipes on the ceiling because they were wrapped in newspapers. I really don't know why. I assume that it was something to do with like insulating it because we had a radiator system, and so there was like a lot of newspaper wrapped around it. But this must have been done several times in different sections because the newspapers were from different dates and they spanned, the entire duration that this couple lived in our house. And I remember I would go in there sometimes and I would just try to like catch little snippets of stories from them, or even something really banal. I remember specifically there was an article about there being some sort of design problem with the new fire hydrants where I grew up, and there was some outcry in the city because they had wasted all of this money on fire hydrants that were they were stripping the sort of seam when they were coming off, and then once they were used a couple of times, they wouldn't stay on or something. That's my thought. Nobody else has that thought that I just said. They might have similar ones. In fact, given the amount of people that have lived and are alive and will live, there might be somebody who says that exact same story that I said just now about the gooseberry bush in the closet and the newspapers. But even that person, that one in a trillion, who has a story that fits all of those same beats, they won't have the same thoughts in their head when they're saying it. They're not picturing the same pipes. They don't have the same lighting coming through the window. And I was imagining a pale blue light. I always do when I think of that room for some reason. It's never nighttime in that room in my memory. It's always 3 p.m. on a Tuesday that's overcast and sort of blue. And that's my thought. And it's based on my memories, and it's probably based on the obfuscation or erosion, corrosion, degradation of memory over time. Things sort of change shape and size and scale over time. But for the most part, that is my thought. And even though I've shared it with you, I still have it, and you don't fully have it. And you can't. And when I die, it will be gone. There's no way to perfectly print that thought. And if there ever is a way to do that, I will not participate in that technology. But I like to think of that thought on days like Election Day, because this is a day in the United States in which people want to give you their thoughts. And they want to replace the texture of your thinking. They want to replace the individual feeling, the sensory experience of your thoughts with very simple ones. And they want you to feel those thoughts that come from them or come from groups of them in your head as if they are your thoughts. And I find this to be a violation, an invasion. And I think of that room because I need to remember what my thoughts feel like, and that better protects me from allowing new thoughts to come into my mind and replace them. My thoughts have a different feel to them. They have a different vividity. Is that a word? Vividness? And they're unlike the thoughts of others, but uh, I will often get lost in the sort of sweep of the river of shouting. And one of the most important things that I ever did for myself is leaving social media. Now, you could say that YouTube is a form of social media. I will grant that in a definition sense it is, but I would say for all intents and purposes, it's not at all the same species of social media that Facebook is or was. I don't even know what's going on with it. Instagram, TikTok, X. It is long form. It doesn't really, it's not a place that I connect with people I know. I do meet people on here, but in a different sort of way. I meet like a slice of them, and I don't require any more than that. And so I am able to access YouTube and the social component of it without falling prey to the things that used to happen on Facebook and Twitter, whatever, in which I started to lose track of the separation between my thoughts and other people's thoughts. And I find this particularly dangerous, especially as I've gotten older and have begun to realize how important my thoughts are. And I know that is somewhere between obvious and bordering on uh, banal or stupid. I don't know. To say, like, wow, it's really important to have thoughts and to have your own thoughts. But one of the reasons I think it's so important is because it is the most, it is the highest good. The story is the highest good. It is the ultimate morality of humans is the story. The story is our major moral currency. It is the one choice that remains a moral good throughout all time is the human story. And everything that we fear is based around the loss of the human story. Everything that we detest is based on an unfair violation or theft or ceasing of another person's human story. And the thing that we consider to be the most terrible violation of life is when somebody takes away their own human story. And the human story is the one thing that is always right and cannot be prescribed. And there is no right way to do it because in and of itself, the human story is always the right story. Even when it is wrong and bad and evil and weird and uncomfortable and terrible and tragic and amazing and overindulgent and boring and overstimulating, no matter what the story is, it is the human story. And on election day, a day in which I believe we are not actually participating in the human story. We're just sort of like coming to the culmination of certain amounts of built up storytelling and sort of taking stats on how those stories are doing. I want to offer a probably over sincere video about the importance of telling your story. And I find it so important and I feel so compelled to do it that I will do the ultimate getting old violation, which is I will tell something that I have told before on this channel, which is a story about, it's a very simple story. It's very quick. It's not very interesting in and of itself. But when I was getting sober, when I was not sober, I would go out every night. And pretty much the only reasons I wouldn't go out is if I was sick or I was having people over to my house to party or hang out, or if I was trying to wait for or like save up something for some big explosion of going outness, right? If I was going to go to a music festival or something, I might get a little bit of extra sleep, but even that was rare. I was so addicted to not only the substances, but also the experience, the risk, the possibility, the messiness, that when I didn't have anything to do, I would search for it. And of course, if you're trying to be a cool guy, you never want to look like you're desperate to find stuff going on. And so there was this sort of mad sadness about finding that thing. And then if I couldn't, I would just be in some recursive loop of driving around or going from place to place or finding myself in situations with people I really didn't want to be around, or even looking back felt quite scared around, just knowing I was in the wrong place. And when I finally got sober, I remember being home and there was nowhere for me to go. Side note, there was places for me to go. I just didn't want to do those places, right? I didn't want to do anything where I wasn't going to get messed up or where I wasn't going to have the possibility of some great, amazing adventure. And so I was sitting at home and I was alone, and I started saying, hello? Just like that. I started saying, hello? 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 And I would say that, and then I just broke down because I didn't know if I was alive. And now I know that hearing that can sound like something that's a little bit, it's like when a teenager goes a little bit too far, you know, when they say that they like got to the school dance an hour late and their world was falling apart. It was not that, like, I knew I was alive, but I didn't know if I, for all intents and purposes, if I meant anything, if I was invisible, if it's possible to say I was invisible without thinking of that Clay Aiken song. Sorry. I couldn't figure out if I existed in any meaningful way because I was alone. And to me, the only way to prove that you existed was to be around other people, because other people at the highest level, they could acknowledge you by caring about you or loving you or being with you physically or saying that nobody else is like you or following you around or wanting to see you all the time, laughing at your jokes, understanding what you're going through, listening to you, looking at you. And without any of that, I was like, oh, I'm out of the human wheel now. Like there's this whole wheel of human nature going on, and I'm not in it. And I believe that one of the reasons that I gave myself over first to binge drinking and then alcoholism and then XYZ, more ism than that, was because when I was young, like in middle school and high school, I was actually part of like the cool kids, but I was never the cool kid. Like I was always the lowest rung, which I think is a especially pathetic place to be because you're like taking the table scraps. Um, and then you're also a piece of shit because you think you're better than other people. Um, and I remember this feeling that the world was always happening. Like there was all this stuff going on. There were people getting in fights and making up and talking about each other behind their back and telling a secret they shouldn't have, and um, making out with somebody at a playground or getting in a fight, and then you know telling people or triangulating some gossip of whatever it was. I was never part of it. I was never in that wheel. And so I remember when I went to college, I was very, very determined to be a part of that wheel, whether that was good or bad or otherwise. I didn't care. I just wanted to be part of like the media cycle. And I did. I think that I was really good at that. And I take absolutely no pride in saying that. Like, I don't, what I feel as I say that is like, I want to laugh because I identify with that so little now that it's one of those things that for a long time I felt like embarrassed that I ever wanted that. And now I feel like a lot of compassion for that guy, like understanding what he was going through and what he thought he wanted. But alone, saying hello, trying to figure out if I was alive, if I existed, and just not being in the wheel anymore because I had, you know, to further torture the metaphor, I had burned every spoke, right? And I was stuck at the axle. And so the world was still spinning around me, but I was just not allowed to be part of that outer wheel anymore. And not only did I not have people laughing at my jokes and looking at me in my eyes and telling me they love me and telling me that I'm their best friend, and understanding where I'm coming from, they didn't want to talk to me. And some people like denounced me because I was a drunk and I hurt people. And even worse than that, I didn't care if I hurt them. And what I learned in that moment, and it was a very tough lesson. It was a lesson I did not want to learn. I did not want to learn this lesson, is that the human story and the importance of the human story is important whether you tell it to anybody or not. And if you can only tell the story when it is to somebody else, then God bless you. Like, good luck. And maybe you'll be one of these people that will always have someone around to tell that story to. It's rare, and it doesn't end well. If we think about people who had the resources or the fame or the beauty or whatever to always have someone around them listening to their story, A lot of those people are very sad or very bad or very dead. Because for most people, you just can't always find somebody to hear the human story that you have as often as you need to tell it. And so we have devices for recording the human story. We have journals, and maybe we have status updates. Back in the day, we had the AIM away message. Some people do it in graffiti, and some people write blogs, and some people carve their name into a tree and say, Randy was here or something. Some people write it in bathroom stalls. Some people piss it onto snow. Some people buy billboards and propose to somebody who doesn't even exist. Some people call phone numbers and wait till the person says hello 3 times and hang up. And these are all ways that we try to be part of that wheel of the human story. But ultimately, the only way that we can ever be satisfied is if we learn to sit attentively to our own storytelling. And there is, in that room, when I started saying hello, 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 I didn't realize it, but that was the first time I was trying to actually tell a story to myself for me as the intended audience and the only audience. And it was a very, very long road. In some ways, I still have to make turns and I have to double back and stuff, but I set weird constraints around this channel about how much of myself I share, or how I'm willing to do it, how much I'm willing to sort of conform to expectations, because I know what happens when I start relying on an audience for a story other than myself. And one of the reasons I named the channel Man Alone, other than it having a strong, close similarity with my name, is that I always wanted to make sure that I was making the video for me as the audience. When I get feedback from comments or people send me messages or whatever, that is really nice. It's really, really nice. And Bibi, my fiance, and I were just talking about and I interviewed PJ from the Wasteland Story podcast. We were talking about just like how nice people are in the solo RPG community and how rare it is to have sort of a negative personality here. But it's really nice, but I don't need it. And that's not saying I don't want it. I love it. I want it. That's not saying I don't want. Yeah, that's not saying I don't want it. I want it. I just don't need it. And part of not needing it is knowing that if the algorithm switches directions and I just stop getting anybody, if I post this video and I get 5 people to watch this video, and then I get 2, and then I get 0, I need to make sure that I can have peace about that. And it's a good process. It's a really good way to do it because otherwise I I start getting hungry for that audience again. Um, if the audience comes, it's delightful. If the audience doesn't come, it's delightful. And I believe that um, solo play is a way that we can develop our ability to be our own audience. And as much as there are fantastic possibilities for connecting with others, and there's there's going to be even better ones in the future. Ultimately, we play for ourselves. We are the tree that falls in the forest, and we are here to know that it makes a sound. When you play a solo game on your own, playing a goodie today, Scarlet Heroes. It is the human story. You are continuing the human story. And one of the reasons I'm averse, I think, to AI, obviously, like there's a piece of it that is sort of dishonest and stealing and co-opting other people's work and then selling it, and I understand that, and where I think I'm perhaps not as rigid about that. For me, it's mostly a preference because to me, AI represents yet another, perhaps the final boss of encroachment on my own thoughts. It is yet another thing that says, don't worry about having thoughts. I'll have thoughts for you. And it's even when it tries to do the thing that we all know what it's up to. Like it's one of those things, the Bill Burr joke about I don't want to sign up for this preferred shoppers card. And they're like, but it's free. And it's like, I know you're up to something. Like nothing's free. I know you're up to something. I don't know what it is, but you are up to something. Like whenever, AI presents this idea of, or whoever the handlers of AI are at this point, they say, it's for like menial tasks. It's not for the big stuff. It's not for writing sonnets. It's not for designing your dream home. It's just the little stuff. And what I always think is, who are you to say that those kind of things are the little stuff? That writing a shopping list is the little stuff? Who are you to say that? And to me, I'm offended to have such an encroachment on human thought. I'm offended to have my unique, beautiful, inane thoughts that when I die will be gone. They'll be dispersed completely. And I'm going to give that over to an AI? No, thank you. The human story is the ultimate morality, and I'm not going to give the human story away. I really love Warhammer 40,000. Trust me, this isn't taking that much of a left turn. And the other day, I got the Ultimate Guide, which there's nothing in here that I find extremely like new or compelling. Like I know so much about Warhammer 40,000 that like every single fact in here I already know. Some of it like I know word for word. I really like anything that I can sort of page through and is a complete reference book, and it's got awesome pictures and stuff like that. But uh, the reason I'm excited about this is because it's pretty much the first thing. I think some people would argue about this, but it's there are very few things in Warhammer that you could say like, where's the reference book? You know, where's the encyclopedia for it or whatever? And this is something that I could hand over to, for instance, my brother is playing Space Marine 2. He doesn't know anything about Warhammer, but he's like, oh, what is this about? What are the Thousand Suns? What's a dreadnought? And I could be like, here, you could borrow this book, right? And the most interesting thing about Warhammer 40K to me is scale. It is not 100 years in the future. No. It's not 1,000 years. It is 38,000 years into the future. Everything is different. The way that a person on Terra in the year M41, 41st millennium, thinks about their soul, thinks about their, like, what it is to be moral, what it is to be a good citizen, what it is to be devout. It's completely different. It's unfathomably different. It is further from me right now than like the Great Pyramids of Giza. It's further of a difference in time. And one of the things that comes up a lot in Warhammer 40K is like, oh, you know, the humans are no better than anybody else. You know, the Imperium of mankind is this brutal and xenophobic and genocidal faction that is just no better than any other faction. And I mean, from a quality or gameplay or coolness standpoint, I agree. But no, I like from a moral standpoint, no, absolutely not. Like, why? Yes, they are brutal and xenophobic, and they are not a model for governance, right? But are you kidding me? You think that all of the factions are equal? Okay, let's look at the Tyranids. We don't even have to look at like the traitors to the Imperium. I mean, like if you don't find that aesthetic, take a look at the Tyranids. This is another species. And do you think we're like that? Do you think we're as bad as the Bio Warriors? I mean, look, they have this reinforced cranial plating, and they have scything limbs and rending claws, and look at this, a lash whip symbiote. They're just as good as us, right? Well, of course not, because they don't carry the human story. Their story is different. And that doesn't mean that they don't have rights. I'm not specifically talking about the Tyranids, because the Tyranids are like the great devourer. But assuming that there are other intelligent life forms in the universe, this doesn't mean that we have the right to, like, you know, land on some planet that has a different species and just like decimate them because they're not humans. But, you know, here are the Eldari, the space elves, right? These aren't me. These aren't you. This is not us. They do not hold the ultimate moral, which is that of passing along the human story. And when we talk about what it is to be a good person, and my God, on election day, there is so many people telling you what a good person does and what a good person thinks and who a good person votes for. Um, all of those people have voted for the human story. And I know that that is maybe too Pollyanna for you. It's too bright, but it's actually not. Like, because sometimes the human story is horrifying, frightening, disgusting, disappointing for sure, bloody, so unfair you can't believe it, right? These are all parts of this human story. And we don't worship it, but we must have some element of spiritualism in regards to this story. We must have some spiritual practice that involves that story. Suppose that we are just sort of living again and again and again, eternal recurrence, what is it? Why can't I remember? Reincarnation. I was supposed to say transcendentalism, reincarnation, or just some short story by Andy Weir, whatever it is. Like, suppose that we were just going to keep being born again and again and again until we have been every person. Is that not the ultimate moral code? Because then when you pass by somebody on the street who's begging you for change and they smell really bad and you've got a lot on your mind and the last thing you need is someone tapping on your driver's side window asking for change, the human story demands that you consider the fact that either you have been that guy or you will be. And so when that turn comes around, you're going to hope that the person on the other side of the car window opens the window and gives you something that can help you out or just make you feel better or just recognize you, right? This is the ultimate morality, the recognition of the shared human story, the net of Indra that glimmers no matter what part of it is touched. And I think what is incredible about Warhammer 40K, and I know for some of you, your brain's just going to shut off when I start talking about like Warhammer 40K. You're going to be like, oh man, I can't go there with you. That's fine. You don't have to worry about it. It's a real shame that it has the number 40,000 in the title, because I think for some people they're just like, nope, not going there. But what is incredible is the human race is spread across millions of worlds, and most people live in hive cities where they work 16-hour shifts, 7 days a week. And their like religion is all of them have the same religion, and their politics, all of them have the same politics, because in this universe, God, he's alive. Sort of. He's also kind of deteriorating on a golden throne, and nobody knows if he's alive or dead or just kind of kept in a limbo. Anyways, not the point. Well, sort of the whole point, but not the point right now. There is all of these people leading these miserable lives in which their continued existence can be just kind of like blinked out in no time, and nobody cares, and there is no justice for it, and no one will remember them, and yet they keep going because the human story must go on. The human story is the point. It is the point. And so if you are somebody like I was, sometimes still am, somebody that has a hard time um, talking or sharing the human story, if you're a person that has a hard time saying the human story without somebody to hear it, then I need you to play a solo RPG. And if you're going to play one, might I suggest Carnage and Ether by Alex T, the sponsor of no, I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm not kidding. We're going to play that soon on the channel, but this is, to me, a solo role-playing is a way to get used to the feel and sound and value of your own thoughts. And in the same way that, like, any religious orientation, that's right, solo RPG, I'm making a religious argument for it, in the way that any sort of religious spiritual practice has like ablutions or sacrifice, offerings, maybe not sacrifice. I don't want you to sacrifice your firstborn or anything, but offerings, rituals. The purpose of those is to offer up a part of yourself, whether that's your time or your motion or your bread or whatever. Offer up that part of yourself to that religion's story, right? Is to make yourself a part of that. And that is why generally I have a pretty syncretic view towards religion, and I think it's just important for people to have faith, if then not. I think that that's really important, to give that piece of your day to this river of the human thing, this human thing of ours, as Polly Walnuts would say. And I think in the same way, solo play is this like money in a wishing well. Like, nobody thinks their wish is going to come true. You ever think about that? Even little kids, they don't think their wish is going to come true. Nobody does. And yet we throw coins in there. Do people think those locks they put like on the bridge are going to do anything? They're just locks on a bridge, but it's a participation in the human story that requires no one to hear it. And that's really the magic of it. Like, a wishing well is so much more beautiful and just so much more in tune, like a harmonious relationship with the universe, and is such a more fulfilling thing to throw away money in a fountain than it is to post a tweet, because nobody sees the coin, and in fact you can't even find your own coin again. Throw a coin by playing. Do yourself that favor. A lot of people who struggle with the motivation to like actually play, a big reason for that is that you want there to be somebody who like sees the coin or gives it to you, or maybe you want it to like throw in a nickel and get a quarter back or something. And no one is going to hear you except you. And so if you can't see the value of that, of being your own audience, there's no trick. You're not going to listen to enough Jocko Willink podcasts until you start getting yourself up at 4 a.m. with The Rock and doing Instagram pictures of being like, about to start my, oh man, does this still happen? This is about the last time that I was had an Instagram account. The Rock used to wake up and be like, hello, everybody, about to do 8,000 sit-ups. If you cannot be your own audience, then then that's why you can't ever motivate yourself to solo play, because you don't want to be alone, or you don't want to face that indecision, or you want it to be really, really fun, and it's just like gotta be this really, really fun thing. And what if it's just a thing you do? Like what then? Is that so bad? What else is there? Right? What's this thing that is really going to give you that way better feeling? Because those kind of things, you can't really plan for them, right? There's not a lot of people that are like waking up every day and being like, at 1 p.m., I'll go do that thing that makes me feel incredible. I don't know, maybe people who like are skydive instructors, but even them, I bet being a skydiving instructor, think about that. You're falling through the air and you're like, man, this morning, like, I know my wife's mad at me. She didn't even like look at me. And like, I hate that feeling when we're mad at each other and like there's just that feeling of tension in the air. And I want to apologize, but I always am the person who apologizes. And so like, even though I might win in the short term, she'll see me as weak and she'll respect me less. And you're falling at terminal velocity while you're thinking all that. I mean, just consider that. Um, every revolution becomes the state. Every new hobby becomes a Tuesday. Everything is just forward motion. If you are interested in this content, there is something calling you to that. And really, the best that I can offer is that this just might be a good way for you to respect the human story. And it is eager to receive you, and I do really feel like it benefits all of us. It is something that heals. It is something that puts good out into the world. And again, if you think I'm naive and you think that that's ridiculous, that's okay too. Like, that's part of the human story too. And so I want you to consider, next time you're like, oh, I really want to solo play, but I build up the situation and then I never move forward. Just be like, okay, but let's just try it. Let me just put out this piece of this story, right? And I don't have to share it with anybody. One of the things that grinds my gears a lot, and it really shouldn't, and I really want to figure out actually why this bothers me as much as it does, is like the occasional demand in a comment that I like perform a certain way, in terms of like all my solo RPG play has to be on camera, right? Or else I'm like abdicating my post or something like that. And I can't give up the solo play that I do on my own. I can't give it up. I can't always film that, look what it did to Ozzy Osbourne. He used to just mumble by himself, and then they put him in front of a camera. Sharon, I can't do it. I have to have my own. I have to be my own audience. And it's one of those weird ass things that you. Sorry, I think I leaned on the mouse and turned it off. You cannot convince anybody that it's going to do anything useful. And I'm feeling that one has when they are trying to share something they think is important, but they can't fully articulate it. And they keep wanting to say, or keep feeling like, you gotta trust me. But then also the futility of knowing that, like, I wouldn't trust that. Like, if just somebody random said, this is a really good thing. And especially because, like, adults are extinct in 2024, and so there's nobody to just be like, yep, I understand that you don't think this is good, but you got to do it, and you'll see later. Like the world lost adults somewhere along the way in the last 20 years. And I certainly am not going to pretend that I'm an adult to any of you. Like, many of you are the same age as me. Some of you are younger and more mature. Some of you are older and have seen way more shit than I've ever seen or will see. And so please don't take this as me, telling you how to live right. All of this is like an ad. It's a commercial for Carnage and Ether by Alex T and Black Oath Entertainment. Do you like Care Nephilis? Then you're going to... No. Okay, we're still not doing that. But we are going... Carnage and Ether is like an arena combat version of Care Nephilis. And I've got access to it. Okay? It just came out. And we're going to do it on the channel. It's one of my favorite Warhammer statues right there. Yeah, so... This is not me lecturing you about like the right way to be or the right way to live or anything like that. Please do not feel that way unless you're somebody that also has a battle organ tank, because then, like me, you rule. But yeah, I'm not saying that's the opposite of what I want to say. I don't think that I'm telling you the right way to be. I'm just saying, like, it's just like I've had some custard, I've had some ice cream at this place, and I want you to get ice cream here too, because I think you'll really like it. And that's it. And I hope any of this made any sense, that it had any value, because if it did for one person, then that's worth it. And for sure, it had value to at least one person. You know what I'm saying? Thanks.